deposited in one of the regional financial institutions, one of the 12 Fed reserve banks. The funds now in the government's account is used to pay government expenses. The recipients of the government money deposit the funds into their bank accounts. Then, through what is called fractional reserve banking, these bank deposits allow the banks to make a lot of money. And here's how it works. The banks are permitted by the Federal Reserve System to hold a small fraction of the money in reserve. They don't have to keep all that money in their vault. They're allowed to keep as little as 10% as reserves and then loan out 90% of the deposits. So for example, if a bank receives a deposit of $1 million, they have to keep 10% or $100,000 in the bank as a reserve, and they can loan out $900,000. That $900,000 moves out into the economy and eventually comes back into the banking system as deposits. Now the bank takes that $900,000, keeps 10% or $90,000, and loans out the other 90%, $810,000. And this process goes round and round until it reaches its maximum effect, whereby the amount of money created out of thin air, thanks to the Federal Reserve and the banks and the fractional reserve system, creates up to 10 times the amount of the original government debt that was funded by the Fed. Now, when this newly created money flows out into the economy, it causes the purchasing power of money to decline. The prices of goods and services go up because the relative value of the money has gone down. The result is that is the same as if the purchasing power had been taken directly from us through taxation. Without realizing it, the American people have been paying, in addition to their income taxes, a hidden tax equal to our national debt of around $14 trillion. Who benefits from this process? Well, the beneficiaries are the politicians, who enjoy an unlimited source of funds, and the bankers, who create money from nothing and then charge interest on it. Boy, not even the mafia can run a racket like that. This is unbelievable. Okay, at this point, some of you might be wondering, but haven't we always had monetary inflation? I mean, that's the experience we've had it all of our lives, so we assume that it must have been going on all the time, right? And secondly, haven't increases in wages and salary kept up with inflation? Well, we can answer the first question by going to any of the inflation calculators we can find on the internet and plugging in some numbers. We find out that starting from 1913 and going up to 2010, the inflation calculator I was able to find, span of 97 years, what cost $100 in 1913 would have cost $2,178 in 2010. Or put it another way, what cost $100 in 2010 would have cost just $4.56 in 1913. Okay, now let's go back 97 years from 1913 and see what the inflation calculator yields. The inflation calculator shows that $100 in 1816 would have cost, or something that cost $100 in 1816 would have cost just $58 in 1913. That's right, prices actually went down. How was that possible? Because that's not something within our experience. Well, for one thing, the currency was not being devalued at that time because the U.S. was on the gold standard, where the dollar was fixed to the value of a certain amount of gold. Also, this period of time saw the U.S. economy growing faster than the money supply. thanks to significant increases in productivity as a result of the Industrial Revolution. And of course, there was no Federal Reserve System operating during that period of time. So to answer the first question, no, we have not always had monetary inflation. As for the second question about wages and salaries keeping up with inflation, it appears that we have because our standard of living appears to be much higher than it was 97 years ago. But the thing is, our wage and salary increases come after the recognition that prices of goods and services have increased due to the injection of money into the economy by the federal government and the banking system. The benefits of this new money accrue primarily to the government and to the banks, not to the public. By the time you and I have gotten our pay raises, the purchasing power of the newly injected money has already been exploited by the government. As a result, you and I are left in the position of constantly having to try to play catch-up. And we can only try to imagine how much higher our standard of living would have been if we had not had all that purchasing power stolen from us, literally. To give you an idea of how much the banks have profited from this scheme, consider a 30-year mortgage on a house at an interest rate of 4.25%, which is about the going rate last time I checked yesterday. To make the example simple, we will assume that after a 10% down payment on a $150,000 house, the loan amount is $135,000. Now, have you ever wondered why the standard down payment is 10%? Well, as I just said, 10% is what the bank is supposed to keep as reserves. They can lend out 10 times that amount as a loan. So what they're doing from you is collecting real money and then loaning you money based on the money you gave to them and then charging you interest on it. Again, what a racket. The monthly payment for this loan would be $664. At the end of 30 years, you would have paid a total of $239,040. Okay, think about what that means. All of the materials and the labor and the land that went into that property cost $150,000. But the amount of money paid to those who just provided the financing was almost $90,000. Now you might think, well, the banks have to be compensated for what's called the time value of money, or the opportunity cost of giving that money to you rather than loaning it to somebody else or investing it in some business venture or treasury bonds or whatever. But you have to remember that the money you borrowed from the bank was created out of thin air. It was not obtained through the sweat of the banker's brow. That money sprung into existence because of a few taps on computer keys. The bank is charging interest on money created from nothing. But when you repay the loan, you repay that with real money that you had to earn off the sweat of your brow. So in effect, you've been turned into a slave. Now, the accepted version of history is that the Federal Reserve was created to stabilize the economy. But if you look at the record of the Federal Reserve since 1913, you see the speculative booms in the 1920s, the 1980s, the 1990s. You see the crashes of 1929, 1987, and 2008. You see the Great Depression of the 1930s. You see numerous economic recessions and a monetary inflation that has eroded more than 95% of the dollar's purchasing power.